Welcome to the Winedown, an afternoon podcast where two techie blokes sit down over a bowl of wine and chat about what's happening in the world of tech. Enjoy while Scott and Nick open up about their week in technology.
Well, hello and welcome back to the Winedown. Lovely to have you here. I'm here with
Scott.
Hello, Scott.
Hello, Nick. How are you going?
I'm superb.
Long time no see.
Long time no see, absolutely. Yes. So, Scott, where are we? What are we not drinking?
So this is a morning session for once. So we decided to talk about what we will be drinking very soon. We're in our office.
We are.
Just to put that into perspective, which is why it looks like a lovely little sterile environment at the back with some whiteboards and various things, but that's good. Carrying on with the tradition of things clients have given us, I thought I'd bring out this little treasure. And this was given to us recently for another job well done.
Right.
We're on a roll here. This is actually a bottle of Black Puma Shiraz 2000.
Yum.
And it still looks quite healthy, quite drinkable. It hasn't lost volume. The cork seems intact. It appears to have been lying down, so that's quite good. It's a Victorian winery, and it's actually going to be very interesting. So Warrenmeng Vineyard,
Never heard of it.
Middle of Victoria,
Okay.
sort of 200 kilometres odd north. What's that? Northwest from Melbourne.
Okay.
So right, sort of in the middle of the state, just off to the left a bit, just up a bit from Ballarat. Little place called Boonambel. And anyway, it's a solid bottle, I'll tell you that. So looking at this very eagerly as to when we're actually going to open it and ensure we can do it justice.
Oh, okay. So that's cool. That's what we're not drinking today. So let's get on with it. Now, earlier this week, we recorded and live streamed the Accounting Technology Fireside Chat podcast.
You did, and I was listening to it, and as I always do.
We have a listener. Yay!
I am the one subscriber. I was listening to it, and you actually at one point, I think you were talking more about some telephony and various things.
We was but this week was all about modern telephony, right? So
yes,
so lots of accountants still have the old, handset on the desk, the PABX in the corner. They're just starting to look at things like Teams Voice and integrated unified communications platforms.
That's right.
And we were confused about the pricing because we don't know.
Ah, yes. So there was some interesting discussion in there, and there was some thoughts about, is it more expensive? Is it less expensive? What happens with Teams Voice? And look, there's some options, and I thought just before we jumped into our sort of discussion today, I thought we'd just cover a little bit of ground quickly around that, because it hasn't been the most clearly delivered topic globally.
That's great.
And look, you were correct in the other podcast that Microsoft in the US does it directly. They handle all the voice rolled in, and it's all sort of magical, and you just tick the box and it happens. Whereas here and in quite a number of other countries in the world, the Teams Voice external connectivity is handled by different telcos in the regions. And you can therefore organise for Teams Voice SIP trunks to be brought into your tenancy and then connected up, and you've got some manual config to do there via some lovely little PowerShell commands to bring it all together. But pricing-wise, aside from the Microsoft licensing element, which ballpark works out about $10 a person, give or take. There's per month.
Okay.
Yeah, look, there's ways you can have the cloud PBX SKU or option rolled into larger plans, so that you're not really just paying for that. You're paying a bit more for a whole bunch of other things as well. Mm-hmm. But look, ballpark figures use $10 a person as a cost for the actual license. Then what you'll find is it's about how do you price call usage. And there's three more ways of doing this. What we've seen so far, when this first came out, call usage was all included, which meant you could be paying $20, $30 or something per user as a bundled solution. Mm-hmm. The problem is most people wouldn't actually make $20 to $30 in calls.
Of course. Everyone's using their mobiles now, right?
They're either using a mobile or they're using Teams calling within the Teams platform, which is free because you're not going out to the external network. So really it's... And if you do make a local call every now and then, or even a mobile call, is it actually $30 worth? It's very unlikely. Calls in Australia in particular are actually very cheap. There's been a lot of competition in that area, and at wholesale rates, it's cents on cents sort of thing per minute. It is not expensive.
Right.
If you believe it is expensive, probably time to shop around a bit and find out what's actually happening. So look, where there was 30 to X, whatever it is, dollars per person, including calls, when you add that up across, say, 20 people in an organisation, all of a sudden you got $600 for calls on top of your Microsoft licensing. You're sort of going, well, hang on, this is more expensive than what I was paying. Yeah, you're right, it probably was. And you're basically paying a lot of money for calls that you're not using.
Expensive dial tone, as we call it.
Exactly. Although in Teams' case, there's no actual dial tone.
There's no dial tone. There you go.
You're paying for nothing.
Yeah, I was say if everyone wants to email me, I can give you an MP3 of dial tone. So.
Well, I'm not sure what to do with it. That's excellent. So anyway, there's two other options that are now available. One says instead of paying per person, you can actually pay per SIP trunk. Now, a SIP trunk is think of it as a virtual phone line. And in your organisation, if you've got, say, 20 people, you would work out that maybe at any point in time, 4 or 6 may be on the phone. Therefore, I only actually need 4 or 6 phone lines or SIP trunks. So you can actually buy a SIP trunk plugged into your tenancy with unlimited calls on it. Cool. And that way you're paying now per trunk for the entire organisation, not per user. The other way is to do it, get SIP trunks with a PAYG, pay-as-you-go option that says you're just paying for your calls as you use them, and you're paying a small amount of money for the SIP trunk to be sitting there.
Superb. Excellent.
For most people, given that they would not be making a lot of calls, I would suggest that going with the PAYG option is actually going to be a lot more cost effective than the other options, especially if people working from home. If you're not making a lot of outbound calls, then hey, it's
I'm actually getting listening to you talk. You actually know quite a lot about voice, don't you?
it's very depressing.
That is very depressing.
we have built our own voice platforms in the past, gateways, session border controllers, the whole wholesale carriage, and splitting it up. And
Yeah, I felt myself nodding off as you mentioned session border controllers, Scott.
Look, it's technically it's quite interesting, and if you like that sort of level of IT, there's a lot you can do in there. But reality today, it's one of those things where all of these problems have now been solved a dozen different ways, and just find the one that's automated and is cost effective for the business, and away it goes.
Cool.
Anyway.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, that's coming on from the Accounting Fireside Chat. So we'll take a minute to hear from our sponsors. We'll be back with you about the real topic today.
Yep.
Okay, we're back.
Excellent.
Excellent.
Wow, that was a quick break.
That was a quick break. Mind you, it may be different when I edit it. You never know how long these breaks will be.
I was wondering if that was representative of the number of sponsors we had. Anyway.
Anyway, what are we talking about today?
So, interestingly, I thought we would cover electronic signatures in a bit more detail.
Electronic
Now,
signatures.
we did talk about this a little bit, quite a number of episodes ago, and say we would get back to this. And I thought, look, let's, given a few things we've seen during the week as well, let's go and just cover this in a bit more detail.
Okay, that's cool. Well, let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
If I wasn't going to use any technology at all,
Yes.
I'd stand at my stand-up desk with my quill pen
Yes.
and get somebody in to handwrite their signature.
That's right. And the old concept of the John Hancock, as it was called, is the actual person coming in with a pen or a writing implement and putting their actual handwritten signature on the bottom of a document.
It's good. Now, people in eSignatures call that a wet signature, don't they?
They do indeed.
Ah, there we go. Yeah, I listen. Yes. I might not know stuff, but I listen. Cool. So then we moved to being able to print documents and do stuff like that.
Yes.
And then people scanned a copy of their signature and pasted it in as a graphic.
Yeah, and look, and this was quite cute. I'm not convinced it was entirely it was accepted at the time as a proper legal approach. However, depending on where look, at the end of the day, it all comes down to risk. Are you happy to accept an order or a document that may have had someone's signature cut and pasted onto it?
Yep.
And if you're selling them something for $50 and it's a box of pencils, you may figure, what's the worst that can happen? I lose my box of pencils.
So I should probably caveat in the podcast today, although we're talking about e-signatures, neither of us is a lawyer.
Correct.
And any advice is general in nature and doesn't take into account anybody listening or watching specific circumstances.
That's spoken just like a lawyer. That's excellent.
There you go.
In fact, I can tell you that having spoken to a number of lawyers about this, it's a bit like getting an opinion on Microsoft licensing from 3 different specialists, and you'll get 3 different answers, and they'll be completely different, and you'll go, well, which one's right? So, well, we can prove that this is the issue because of this, this, and this, and therefore they're all right, as long as you can say that this is the path we've taken and why.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're not going to go there. We're going to talk about technology if we could.
We are indeed.
And we'll talk about some of the issues out there. We're
Okay.
going to talk about that.
Okay.
So then, people were scanning and putting in their signature, and we know that's not very good. And also, if you suddenly, I remember back in the 2000s looking at file servers in the customers I was working at, there'd be all these people's signatures as graphics stored all over the place, which is highly dodgy. And then
where would they store them? In a common shared area?
Absolutely. And we're going to move past that because I'm scared I'll name a customer and I don't want to do that.
I hereby grant myself a pay rise, CEO.
Okay. It worked once.
Well.
Anyway, so then we move from there to some early things. There's some SaaS platforms. Obviously, I've heard of Adobe Sign.
Yes.
They bought EchoSign, didn't they?
Adobe bought EchoSign, yes.
Right. DocuSign was an early...
DocuSign was an earlier... And DocuSign, an early cloud app as well.
Wow.
Where they actually use the power of the cloud to present all of this, to store it, and to scale.
Wow. And there's PandaDoc, HelloSign. There's Nitro as well, right? Nitro have a...
Look, there's a lot of others now. Every man and their dog sort of thing has tried to get into this game because when you look at the pricing around some of them are actually quite expensive, and you can sort of see why. But as per anything, Economics 101 says as soon as someone works out, hey, there's a lot of margin in this particular thing in an industry, someone will come in and I can do it at 80% of that, and then someone will come I can do it at 80% of that, and it's a race to the bottom pretty quickly.
And certainly these things commoditize really quickly. I remember having lots of chats with a quite large e-signing platform provider, and they were saying the way they did their maths is they're saving you money on the physical process of signing.
Yes.
So they're going to work out the cost of physical signing, and they're going to charge less than that. And while the market will bear that when you're the only guys doing it, very quickly somebody's going to come along and rip the guts out of that.
That's right. And the other thing to keep in mind, though, is if you're looking at labour costs, yes, there is a labour cost in doing this particular function. However, let's keep in mind that you're assuming that you're 100% utilising all those labour savings in a more productive manner at the same time.
Yeah, and that's the we go on in the IT industry, we'll save you. I know, actually, there's a whiteboard behind where I talk about the number of minutes per day we save during certain things.
Oh, yes.
And we do know that quite often you save all this time and people just take another break or they'll have another water cooler conversation. It doesn't all translate into dollars.
Our role is outcome-based now.
Yes.
And because we've delivered the outcome, I can go home after an hour's work.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's lots of products out there.
Yes.
Lots and lots of tools.
And they're all addressing the issue of previously printing the document out, signing it, scanning it back in, saving it, and emailing it.
Okay, cool. Well, that's cool. Got that. Now, e-signatures don't work everywhere. Now, again, this is just what we've seen around the traps. This isn't advice, but yeah, I did see something on the tax office website that they're comfortable in certain circumstances with electronic signatures, but I know they're not valid in some courts, I think.
So this what we have been able to research a bit and find out, and also find out from actual experience. Prior to COVID, there was a slow progression around acceptance of the concept, but the actual laws had not been written to allow it to happen. So you would say, here's a contract for someone, I'm going to electronically sign this, and they'll say, hang on, that particular document, which may be a government-related document, maybe it's for a land title, or it's for a whatever it is, either a corporate document or something. They'll say, we recognise the concept of electronic signing. We actually don't have an issue with it. However, the current laws don't recognise that as a valid way to execute that type of contract.
And even better, because I believe we have a precedent-based legal system in Australia.
Yes.
It's not just you write the law; you have to have a case about it as well before
yes.
it really works.
So anyway, when not
that I'm a lawyer, I'm not
no, when the whole pandemic issue came along and everybody had to start working from home, there was this big thing about, well, how do we sign documents? And you can't have people turning up somewhere when you're supposed to not be there.
Yep.
So there were these emergency laws rushed through parliaments and in various areas to say, we are going to allow these types of documents to be electronically signed until this date, and then it got pushed out again to this following date and so forth, to support the safety factor of signing online and not having to have people all go to a certain place where they're all together doing something just to sign a document and then running away.
Okay, so buyer beware. Make sure the document you're e-signing is, that actually means something.
Well, this is part of it. The laws that were rushed through covered most things. What they didn't cover, in some cases, were acquiring corporate entities, like purchasing a company. They didn't cover a few other very specific documents. I know that even for our company, if we need to make changes to certain ASIC statements, we can do a lot online, but there's one particular thing we've had to do a couple of times that needs an actual wet signature.
I do believe I heard the other day, and this is hearsay, that the statutory declaration requires a witnessed wet signature in order to be valid.
Witnessing, well, there's an interesting segue.
Oh, look at that segue. And I hadn't even read the notes yet, so I'm doing well.
So how do you witness an electronic document?
That's an interesting question. Yes, I've got no idea. You'd know those, Scott, because you research these topics. I just turn up and chat.
I've tried a variety of approaches. The first time I was given a document to sign, it had a witness and it had a signature, and I signed it, and I said witness was DocuSign. I literally typed DocuSign there.
Yep.
And for whatever reason, the other party seemed happy with that.
Okay.
Which was quite good.
Yep.
Because the whole concept is that your witness is to prove that you were the actual one signing.
And that's DocuSign doing that, or that's EchoSign, or that's Nitro,
by default, the fact that you have an identity in the platform,
yep,
and that someone has sent a document to that identity is supposed to say that, well, therefore you are the one signing. That alleviates that need. But this is also the foundation of some of the laws about where they're running into problems. The law says
it's also quite fun, because I know when you go and sign an affidavit, you have to provide the lawyer with ID, so they can do 100 points of ID check. Yet when you go to and I think I've done this before, I've gone to a JP to have a signature witnessed, they didn't ask me for ID. So, and I don't think for some documents they have to. So the fact that a person was here and they saw them sign it is okay for some documents, where some you have to prove you're who you say you are. And I certainly know, the online stuff, I haven't seen them do 100 points of ID to prove you're that person, right?
Well, that'd be interesting. Send a document to someone and say, ID check, hold your license up to the camera, hold your passport up to the camera.
In the crypto world, you have to do that, right? So if you sign up for a cryptocurrency account with any of the major providers, you have to write a document and hold it up to the camera. You have to scan your ID, and they've got electronic tools which verify them. It's actually really cool.
We know someone in another country who had to verify their identity with a lawyer by holding the identification document beside them and on the camera, and this was to show.
Oh, that was to sign that document. I remember that one. Yes.
The logic eludes me in some cases how this. Anyway, but the idea being that the concept of a witness for a document is going to slowly disappear over time as electronic signatures are more openly respected by various laws.
Cool. Got it. Now, originals and copies.
Well, this is the foundation over a lot of this, and where some of the issues appear from. So, if I've gone in somewhere and I've signed an original document, there's my wet signature on a bit of paper. That is the original. I can make 20 copies of that, but sometimes people actually say, I want to see the original, not a facsimile of the original.
Yet there is no concept of an original in the digital world.
That's right. And in fact, the original is the original and the copy at the same time.
Yes.
Because it is electronically stored. And as soon as someone has actually clicked on the screen, the fact that that document has been stored is now a copy of the representation of what was on the screen.
Theory of computing 101.
Yes.
Yes. So there is a problem with you can't ask for the original.
There is no concept of an original
It's
anymore.
an audit log, right?
Yes, well, but this is why technology has gone ahead of the law, because the law is saying, well, hang on, no, there's an original. Where is it? Okay.
Actually, interesting. I was reading in one of the newspapers. One of the big accounting firms they've electronically, big legal firms have electronically scanned all of Australia's laws
Yes.
and found where things like that are outdated.
yes.
And there's over 400 laws to change to bring them up to date.
Actually, I think that's pretty good. I would have thought there's a lot more.
Yeah. Oh, and one's talking about using a facsimile or telexing the information, or using smoke signals, or carving it on the message tree.
Interestingly, I can physically sign a document and fax it to someone,
And that's okay.
but I can't. Yeah. Anyway, we move on.
Yes.
So
Costs. We've kind of touched on that.
Yes.
We have. And it varies wildly. It's quite funny, I noticed that a Xero, at least the accountant's version, has e-signing built in.
Yes.
And they use Adobe Sign.
Yes.
And it's free. You don't pay for it as an accountant. It's part of your pay. You're paying for your
You're
bundle.
paying for it indirectly, yes.
But if you actually look at the cost of Adobe Sign, it's actually quite expensive. So you're actually getting it cheaper than you could any other way. I think lots of people recognise that. Damn good deal, Xero. Rod Drury, nice one. But
yes. Well, so look, it's interesting, and this is where DocuSign sort of came in early on as well. They worked out that, and look, DocuSign, as far as the tool goes, it's quite useful. Is it the cheapest solution? No, you can be paying like $50+ a month per user to have all your documents there and to do that. I know I've used and actually have a license for Adobe's.
Yeah, I have a
Sign,
license for Adobe's.
and that's $20 ex GST a month.
Yep.
Which is good, and that's just me sending stuff off and getting stuff back and so forth. DocuSign worked out that if you're going to really get some traction here, there are other business models rather than just charging per user. So they actually got some good traction in the real estate industry, especially in the US. And they said, well, it doesn't make sense to go and license every realtor in the US because, they're going to be sending a few documents out, but there's all these different people that sign in different places, and how does this work? So they actually created a model that said, we're going to do it by document.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool, because then there's revenue by document, so that all fits into the model.
And they would say, look, either 1,000 documents or 10,000 documents at a time will cost this much.
Yep.
And you can just sort of store them up and use them as you go through.
That makes sense. So there's different models now, but also these things aren't just standalone anymore, are they?
No. And this is the whole progression of cloud applications. And once you got beyond the initial app and you start to look at the more advanced ways of putting things together, you get into integrations.
Yeah, and I talked about Xero doing that, but there's more and more of these where that signing process, you don't know who's doing it, it's just integrated in part of what you do.
It's hidden.
So
yes.
I know that LawPath, for example, is a great software startup in Australia, do e-signing as part of their platform, which makes sense for legal documents, right? And we're going to see that more and more and more, right? I think now Infinity and some of the other document creation tools also starting to introduce signing. I know Practice Ignition have signing built in, so that stuff's all coming.
I think today, if you haven't got it, it's the new table stakes.
Yep.
There's no way anyone will come out with a platform now that actually needed to have physical documents sent out and moved around, and it's not as if you need signatures to change a bank account. Westback. Anyway,
ANZ. But anyway, moving past that. Yes.
So we will. Yes.
Yes. So there obviously is a push in real estate. There's a push in accounting now, and there should be a push in banking. I did hear Jared Florian at ANZ is pushing to automate all of their physical forms and get them all online.
I think part of this is just giving them time to catch up.
Yep.
Certain larger industries move a bit more slowly, and
there's pressure on them around compliance, right? So they're not. You just can't go and make willy-nilly changes in areas that are under scrutiny from royal commissions.
That's right.
Luckily, we're not, so we'll do what we want. Cool. So that's e-signing. Any closing words on electronic signatures?
I'd just like to see it everywhere. I mean, you look at what's happened with this whole work from home environment globally, and the fact that it's not just short term now; it's likely to be the new sort of norm.
Yep.
You can't not have this.
No.
So it's really just a matter of time for the laws to catch up, for the applications to catch up when they're not there, and that'll be it.
Cool. Excellent. That's cool. So, e-signatures.
eSignatures. Yes.
So, all right. So that was talking about electronic signatures. Let's
Yes.
talk about some news items, Scott.
Look, there was an interesting thing that happened during the week, and I thought I'd just raise the highlights of it here, and we might actually come back and do a bit of a separate episode on this because it's heading into a certain direction. So there's a processor company called AMD, and there's you may be familiar with Intel, for example. They make processors as well, and these are the sort of processors that go in your home computers and your work computers and so forth. During the last few weeks, they bought a company called Xilinx for $35 billion US.
And if you don't know, that's quite a lot of money.
Yeah, so I've been told.
Yes.
Yes, and look, you think about what could Xilinx possibly be doing? And they produce silicon chips, like a thing called FPGA, field programmable gate arrays.
Well done.
Yes, there we go. We managed to get that out in one sentence. Which is
And systems on a chip.
yes, system on
SoC?
chip, SoC, which is it's a way of putting an entire computer essentially on one chip, which is very good for things like IoT, where you've got your network, you've got your memory, you've got your processor, you've got everything basically you need all in the one place, and it's very cost effective to produce. But
So we should do a whole session on software changing hardware to deliver outcomes in the data center.
Well,
So
the
FPGAs and
interesting
SoCs.
thing, the interesting thing about this, aside from the fact that I hadn't really heard of them, but not that I'm really following that part of the industry, but the fact that someone's just gone and forked out $35 billion US for a company says, well, obviously they do something that was of interest. There is a lot of cost in fabrication plants for processors, and I get that, but still, if you're already doing that, why would you spend that much money? Now, where this is heading, you may go and look at, I can get a virtual desktop, I can go into Amazon or Azure and get a VM with so many CPUs in it. Yeah, okay, that's the basics. You then look at, do I want GPUs or graphical processors in there to offload things like, maybe I'm doing graphics or AutoCAD style things, maybe I'm doing
games.
rendering or playing games in a hosted VM in a cloud. Yeah, perhaps. But
Or maybe I'm compiling code in Visual Studio, because we're now doing a lot more of that in the cloud rather than on your machine.
well, and this is also where we're getting into companies like NVIDIA, and they make graphical processing units, not so much CPUs, but the GPU side has gotten so advanced in recent times that it can actually be a lot more efficient doing calculations in a GPU than it can in a CPU.
Which is where the FPGA comes in, because I can change how it works and make it more effective for some calculations rather than others.
So there's a trend that's starting to occur here, and what it's showing is that your CPU, or central or generalized processor, is now going to be more of a bit of a, think of a little manager going around saying, hey, you do this, you do this, you do this. I'm going to send the graphical functions there. I'm going to send the network functions there.
I'm going to send the analytical functions down there. So you can start to get specialized CPUs.
Yes, and this is a very interesting direction that the hardware industry at least is heading, that they can't make CPUs go any faster really because of physics. There's a sort of a cap at that sort of 4.x gigahertz sort of model. So they're now splitting out all these functions into separate specialized little units. And it's full circle, because back in the 8088 days,
that's what they did. There were maths code processors.
Used to have the maths code processor where you'd actually just do maths functions in there. It was a separate chip to make things go faster. So we're actually going full circle back into
there
there.
we go.
Anyway.
Well, that's been brilliant, Scott. That's been a superb wind down. I'm going to go and get that all edited up and working. But thank you once again.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. And if you do like this, please subscribe on whatever platform you're listening or watching us to, and put a post in the comments and ask us to cover a topic that you'd be interested in. And watch out, because coming soon is the great backup debate, where we discuss whether you need to back up your cloud. Anyway, you guys have a great day.
Don't
See you
forget to
later.
patch. Bye.
Bye.